I'm Stacy. Standing in the middle of the bustling ballroom, all eyes are on me. The air is thick with a palpable silence, a stark contrast to the laughter that was echoing just moments ago. My mother, still standing at the front with the microphone limp in her hand, looks at me with a mix of shock and confusion. The sound of the microphone hitting the floor still rings in my ears, amplified by the speakers into a sharp, final note. Let me take you back to how I ended up here, in this moment where I finally stopped hiding. I grew up in a small town outside of Seattle, in a cozy 2-story house on Maple Street. My father, Henry, was a kind-hearted mechanic. He spent his days covered in grease, fixing cars at the local garage. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. Every Sunday morning, he'd cook breakfast for the family, a simple meal of pancakes and bacon that filled the house with warmth. My mother, Vera, was a socialite. She was all about appearances, always hosting parties and making sure our family looked perfect on the outside. She was involved in various charity events and was well known in the community. But at home, she had a different side. I have a younger sister, Lily. She was the apple of my mother's eye. Lily was beautiful, with long, golden hair and a smile that could light up a room. She was into fashion and socializing, always the center of attention at parties. I, on the other hand, was more of a bookworm. I loved math and science, and I spent most of my free time studying. When I was 15, I got the highest score in the state on a math competition. I was so excited to tell my mother. I rushed home, thinking she'd be proud. But when I showed her the certificate, she just said, "That's nice, dear. But when are you going to start thinking about finding a boyfriend?" It was like a punch in the gut. I realized then that no matter what I achieved, it would never be enough for her. My father, though, was my rock. He always believed in me. He'd leave little notes in my lunchbox, like "You're smarter than you think, Stacy," or "Keep reaching for the stars." I kept every single one of those notes in a shoebox under my bed. After high school, I got into Stanford University. I was accepted into their prestigious business program. My mother wasn't too thrilled. She thought I should have gone to a more social school. But my father drove me to campus, and as we said goodbye, he handed me a note that said, "You're going to do great things, Stacy. Make your own path." At Stanford, I worked my butt off. I was taking challenging courses and participating in internships. By the time I graduated, I had multiple job offers. I chose to work at a large consulting firm, Summit Consulting, based in Seattle. The first few years were tough. I was working long hours, often pulling all-nighters to meet deadlines. But I loved it. I was learning so much and making a name for myself. By the time I was 32, I was a senior manager at Summit. I was in charge of a team of 20 people and was handling multi-million-dollar projects. But I never told my family about my success. Every time I tried to share something about my work, my mother would make a snide comment. Like when I got a promotion, she said, "All that work and you still don't have a husband. What's the point?" Lily got engaged to her boyfriend, Ethan, a wealthy real estate developer. Their engagement was a big deal in our small town. My mother took over the wedding planning, choosing the most expensive venue, the Four Seasons in downtown Seattle. She was determined to make it the event of the year. A few months before the wedding, my mother sent the seating chart to Lily for approval. When Lily forwarded it to me, I saw that I was assigned to table 10, right next to the kitchen. It was the table where you put people you didn't really want to be noticed. I called Lily, and she said, "Mom said the head tables are for couples, and since you're not bringing a date." I just said, "Fine." I knew it was my mother's way of putting me in my place. The night before the wedding, I was staying at my parents' house. I was lying in my old bed, looking at the glow in the dark stars on the ceiling that my father had put up when I was a kid. My phone buzzed. It was my boss, Mr. Thompson. He said, "The board has voted unanimously. You're our new chief operating officer, effective Monday." I need your signature on the appointment papers before the press release goes out. I'm at my cabin in the mountains this weekend. Where are you? I told him I'd be at the wedding. He said he'd drive down to the hotel to meet me. The day of the wedding was beautiful. The ceremony was held in the hotel's garden. Lily looked stunning in her white wedding dress. As I watched her walk down the aisle, I felt a mix of happiness for her and a twinge of jealousy. She had always been so sure of herself, so confident. I, on the other hand, had always been in the shadows. After the ceremony, we moved inside for the reception. The ballroom was decorated with crystal chandeliers and white roses. The toast started. Ethan's best man gave a funny speech, and everyone laughed. Then Lily's maid of honor, her college friend, gave a touching speech about sisterhood. I clapped along, but inside, I was feeling a bit sad. I wished I could have been up there, giving a speech for my sister. Then my mother stood up. She walked to the front of the ballroom like she owned the place. "Since my Henry can't be here tonight," she said, dabbing at her eye with a handkerchief, "I'll speak for both of us." She started talking about Lily's childhood, all the cute things she did, her dance recitals. The room was filled with smiles and nods. Then, she looked across the ballroom and saw me. Her expression changed. "And I want to take a moment for my other daughter, Stacy. Let's all pray for her. She's 35 and still no man wants her." The room went silent for a second, and then the nervous laughter started. People were looking at me, some with pity, some with amusement. I sat there, looking at my glass of sparkling water. The bubbles were rising, just like my anger. I thought about all the years of being ignored, of my achievements being brushed aside. I thought about the $500 million project I had just closed at work, about the 500 employees who reported to me. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Thompson. He said he was pulling up to the hotel. I looked at my aunt, Martha, who was sitting next to me. Her eyes were filled with tears. She squeezed my hand, as if to say, "It's okay." I made a decision right then. I put my phone away, stood up, and said, "Actually, Mom, he's already here." The ballroom doors opened, and Mr. Thompson walked in. He was wearing a sharp suit, and he carried himself with confidence. He walked straight to my table. "The board voted unanimously last Friday. As of Monday morning, you are the new Chief Operating Officer of Summit Consulting," he said, placing a pen on the appointment letter. The room was in shock. People were whispering to each other. Lily's father-in-law, a well-known businessman in the city, stood up and said, "Summit Consulting? That's a Fortune 500 company." My mother stood there, her mouth open. She didn't know what to say. I picked up the pen and signed the letter. My hand was steady. I looked at my mother and said, "Don't, Mom." She stopped, and the microphone dropped from her hand. The rest of the wedding was a blur. People came up to me, congratulating me, asking me about my work. My mother sat at the head table, silent, looking lost. Lily came up to me and said, "You could have told me, Stacy." I said, "I tried, for years. You just weren't listening." As I left the hotel that night, I felt a sense of liberation. I had finally stopped hiding. I looked at the Seattle skyline, the lights twinkling in the distance. I knew that from now on, I was going to live my life on my own terms. In the following weeks, my mother called me a few times, but I didn't answer. I needed some space. Lily texted me, asking if we could talk. I said yes, but I knew it would take time for things to change. Aunt Martha, inspired by my newfound confidence, signed up for a painting class at the local community center. She sent me a picture of her first painting, a beautiful landscape. She looked so happy, like a new chapter of her life had just begun. I'm still learning to embrace my true self, to let go of the past. But standing in that ballroom, I knew that I was finally on the right path. I was no longer the girl who sat at the table next to the kitchen, hiding her achievements. I was Stacy, the chief operating officer of a major consulting firm, and I was ready to shine.